Mr. Sullivan.
Yes, Mr. Jackson.
There he is.
Yes, I am. And I'm very definitely not letting you down.
That's true. I appreciate that.
Either in the past, the present, or the future, in
Never.
both the Cloudlandia or on the mainland. I've covered the bases.
So, is it? Are you in Toronto or Chicago?
Yes, I am. Yeah, we're just closing down on the 20th for until the 2nd. So,
yeah,
our entire company, the vast worldwide enterprise that we now
I
are,
love that.
We closed down, and because we encourage entrepreneurs to be with their families.
Yes.
Over the holidays, and therefore we won't tempt them to be in touch with us.
That's so great. I love that. Very good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, is it a winter wonderland there yet?
No, it's actually, it's right now, it is about 40 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh, that's not too bad.
No, it's, and the snow has been minimal so far. You never know, for all the talk about, people making predictions about how it's going to go in one direction or another. My general impression of being here, this is my 47th winter in Toronto, and it's not predictable from one year to the next what's going to happen.
That's it. Yeah, it can be.
Yeah.
Well,
of course, we used to call climate weather, back in the old days. What is now known as climate, we used to call it weather.
Oh, that's funny.
Well,
I'm going to be, I'm going to be in Chicago in just a few weeks.
Yeah. So, we have, and there's real momentum building in the, in the game changer community.
There really is.
The 10 times community. I just had my first 4 workshops, and I have 5 people who have freed up more than 500 hours just in the first quarter of doing the Hoot Up.
That is great.
Hoot Up hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had brothers who are partners in a financial services firm in Utah, who both freed up 640 hours using exactly the same strategy and basically getting freed up from the same activity. And they're just ecstatic that they could do that in one quarter.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so great. Yeah, I'll tell you, it's such a, that's been a big, lots of layering things that have been happening in the last few months here for me. And that's, certainly one, realizing that I'd already freed up I'd already hooed up my 1,000 hours. But just this idea of then thinking the corollary to that of having now 1,000 investable hours available for opportunities. And now going and looking at those, the best places to invest those 1,000 hours. And that 1,000 hours, which is really interesting, really lays out to the matches up to what the article that we talked about last week about
really
the
great article.
the optimal for engagement
use of your time.
hours, 25 hours a week. Yeah. And
well, the interesting thing, think of the few number of people, in the workaday world, who just through some rethinking of how they're operating, can in a very short period of time, free up, what's essentially half of the work year. Hello.
Am I there?
Hello.
Oh, there we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. That was my fault. I have a mute on my headset here, and I've got this head cold, so I had moved it to cough and then didn't send it back. Sorry about that.
Yep. Well, that's great. The backstage people can take care of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And no, I was just saying that if you think about the uniqueness of the conversation we're having and the topic we're having, how many people in the workaday world in Toronto or Orlando can just in a 90-day period can set themselves on a goal to free up what is essentially half of their work year and have immediately available actions, decisions, communications, teamwork to actually pull that off, and then move their time into much more fascinating and motivating circumstances and activities. I said, you want to talk about freedom? This is extraordinary freedom.
Mm-hmm. So I feel really good about that that realization, and it puts some kind of I'm really being thoughtful about the allocation of those 1,000 hours.
Yes,
and that's really, I think, a very helpful thing, because when you get down to it, that's it may be. When you're thinking about looking at multipliers for those things where there's bigger opportunities with them is in broader collaborations, where you can have a bigger impact. It's pretty great.
Yeah, well, I think, that's the other aspect of it, that if your whole life, your work life is about howing, and you project 5 years out, 10 years out, if you got freed up from your present house, you'd just be doing other house.
Yes.
You would, and they would be house where probably you moved up into some sort of hierarchy where now not only did you have to do your house, but now you were responsible for a lot of other people's house. And at nighttime you're doing emails, you're not sleeping well, and you're just starting to think more and more about the day when you get to retire from the the empire of how.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the kingdom. It's not the kingdom; it's the dictatorship of how. Yeah. It's a fascinating thing, and all along, as I've become an entrepreneur and then a coach of entrepreneurs, I've said, what's the point in actually freeing yourself up from employment, only to take on the worst aspects of being an employer? In other words, say you don't want to work for somebody else, but you get to work twice as much for yourself. And I said,
somebody said that the definition of an entrepreneur is a person who'll work 80 hours a week just so they don't have to work for someone else 40 hours a week.
Yeah. And it's the worst of both worlds. You now have just as much oppression, but no security.
Right. Yeah, that was what it was. They worked twice the hours for half the money just to not have to work for someone else. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very, very interesting. First of all, I have to give full credit that the whole notion of who, not how, and the 1,000 who'd up hours and opportunities, as you have coined these words, are entirely the prodigy of our original Joy of Procrastination conversation. Yeah, and it was seeing procrastination as a totally positive response to activities. You want to get to a bigger and better result in the future, but looking at all the activities that were going to be necessary to get there, you resisted getting yourself involved and just looked afield at other people for whom those would be fascinating and motivating activities.
Yeah.
In teamwork with you. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. So,
it's really good when you embrace it like that, like as a signal. I think that was your idea, that it as a signal. I was laughing because when you said
inner wisdom, profound, it's profound experiential wisdom. You've added up the tally of all your pains and pleasures of different kinds of work all your life, and you've distilled them down into an instantaneous wisdom that when you're faced with something that your past experience has told you it never works out well for you, you instantly refrain from getting involved.
Did you ever meet Gary Halbert? Do you know who Gary Halbert is?
No, I know.
You know who he is, though. Yeah.
I totally know him from everybody's.
Okay. Well, one of the great things he said was that he said God gave us a sign by planting palm trees in all the places that were suitable for living. And I wonder about this, our sign for procrastination is our sign for things we shouldn't be doing.
Yes.
That's an interesting thing.
Yeah. And it's not, what I say to people, if you only have the goal of freeing yourself up from them, but then failing to actually utilize the free up time to do something that is much more productive, much more creative, and has a much bigger multiplier, then you've almost been a traitor to your own cause.
Well, you've been on this train for a long time around the station of it with the, I remember one of the great, almost poetic quotes that you have is that, what if you knew the more that you grew, things get easier for you? When would you be through? That's kind of that's where we're going with this, right? That the more you start to support yourself with who's doing all the hows, that's things get easier, but you grow.
Yeah. It's really interesting. By the way, in the last 2 weeks, and I mentioned this on our last podcast, I've really gone deep with that concept that there's never any room for improvement, and I've had 4 workshops, and I basically give myself the first hour of the workshop to have people respond to this, and in every case, it's produced an entirely new and different conversation completely.
What are some of the highlights of that?
Well, one of the things is that I came up with this model, which I'm going to translate for the next quarter into multimedia. And it was only because on a day when in the last 2 weeks, so I had 4 10 times workshops and 2 more on tomorrow and the next day, and that's 6 for December. It's a short month because of the shutdown, and I was asked to come in to Gary Moderset. He's a longtime coach, one of our associate coaches, and I was talking to a workshop who were only there for their second workshop of signature level, and they had just done their Colby profile results in the morning, and they would be doing unique ability in the afternoon. So Gary asked me to come in. I had time right after the 1 o'clock end of lunch break, and I went in for 15 minutes. And I said, I'm going to give you a model. I don't have a long time. I've only got about 15 minutes, but I want to do this. And I said, and it's geometry. I was always very taken with geometry. And I says, think of a straight line that's going from left to right. And that's you as an entrepreneur. And so you're a 2-dimensional creature. So you're a flat line. But your goals are actually you're at the bottom of the page, but your goals are at the top of the page, and you're trying to grow as a straight line. And you say, well, I think I'll just extend the line on both sides more and more. And what you're extending is how. So your goals are bigger and better. And because you're a flatliner, your notion of growth is to flatline some more off to the sides on each side. And so the line just keeps getting wider and wider. It's off the page, but you can never go up. You can only go sideways. Okay. So I said, I'll tell you this, that in the United States, I don't know how it is in Canada, but 3/4 of all incorporated businesses, roughly 21 million incorporated businesses in the United States, are one-person operations. Which tells me that they're probably doing a lot of howing.
What percentage was that, did you say?
Well, there's about 28,200,000
businesses.
These are incorporated businesses.
Yes.
Pardon me. This is 2017 numbers.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
I had heard something similar, yeah.
And 21 billion out of the slightly more than 28 billion are one-person operations. The next 7 billion, which takes you right up to 28 billion, are enterprises of 20 individuals or fewer. And then the 200,000, that's where all the huge growth and the massive amount of income comes. Okay. So what it tells you is that you're to the base camp on Everest before you get into anybody actually doing who, not how. It's kind of like from the final summit base. It's not the base camp. It's or everybody's at the base camp. So
yes,
everybody, and then all the, getting up Everest and everything is simply among people who can do who, not how.
Yeah.
So I said, why don't we just take your original straight line? So we come back to the original drawing. It's just, let's say it's 3 inches long. And I say, instead of howing, why don't you just create a triangle? So you're the base of the triangle, and you got one side going up like this and one side, and each of those are a who. Okay. And in the middle of the triangle, you're providing the what and why. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. And then off to the side, using one who for the base of another triangle, you can create two more who's, and then you can keep creating triangles. And the triangle is the strongest structure in the universe.
Right.
And so anyway, I did that, and I did it just on the smartboard, where I was drawing with magic markers.
Yes.
And everybody got it. That there's no way of growing from your flat line except through who.
Yes.
If you just add hows, you're still flatlining.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I didn't realize that the numbers were that. I knew that 20 plus million of the 28 million were single sole proprietors, one person. But I didn't realize that the other 7 million are all under 20. So there's only 200,000 that are more than 20, more than 20 people. That's really great. That's really great data.
Yeah, and we're in our 30th year, and I put a whole bunch of statistics, and this is really a rough construction that I'm talking about, but enterprises that are in their 30th year or reached 30 years with their original owners and have exceeded $10 million. It's 1 in 250,000 companies in the United States. So one company out of 250,000 would actually get to that. So we're in our 30th year, and we check all the boxes there. So I told my team that. I said, I said, we try to make it as pleasant and enjoyable around here, but you got to realize that what we pulled off over the past 30 years is really quite an extraordinary feat.
Yes. Yeah. That's something.
Yeah.
These whole, when you look at it, you think about this, there is no other way out of that, being in that 20 million. There's no way out of that,
No.
Yeah. Do you
find you can't get out of it by going sideways?
Yeah. Is that predominantly who's like in the signature program businesses that are trying to make that next level, or
what? I would say it's far more diverse and different than it was 20 years ago, where we drew a lot from financial services. So
right.
So it was essentially an individual, like you started with real estate.
Yes,
real
exactly.
estate agents,
Yeah.
And they see spending money on help as a cost.
Right. I got it. Yeah, an expense, not a
Well,
capital.
they see money. They see spending money on themselves as a cost.
Especially because we're so brought up. Like it's I wonder about these blocks that people feel like there's that they should do something if they've got the capacity to do it. That it doesn't register with them to not to free up time. Sounds like that is counterproductive. That I could be doing that if I have the time to do it. I should be doing it without the revering what the hood up time is really going to actually create.
Yeah.
It does feel an expense.
There's a number of social and cultural issues that affect that. For example, the majority of our 3,000 entrepreneurs don't live in the center of metropolitan cities. They live in suburbs, and a lot of them live in smaller communities. And if it were known, for example, in their personal life that they had a driver, that they had people who maintained their property for them, that they had housekeepers, that they had cooks, that would be not socially and culturally attractive or positive.
Yeah,
they would be thought of getting above themselves, and what I've realized is that getting above yourself is actually a lifetime strategy.
Oh.
That you can never go wrong. You can never go wrong with any strategy for getting above yourself.
Oh my goodness, Dan, that's so funny. I mean, it is true. Like for years that, it's always, there's been one of two receptions to the news that I have a personal assistant, Courtney, who spends 30 hours a week just doing stuff for our life, managing the household and the groceries and cooking and gas for the cars and doing all that stuff that either people can't even believe that happens. Like, it just seems so, I don't know what the right word is. And some things like, soft or whatever, that you can't go to the grocery store or you can't do laundry or all of those things. And then there are other people that they just immediately get it, and they don't understand that. They understand that what that really means is that if she's working 30 hours a week doing stuff for my life, that's stuff that somebody would have to do. That's 30 less hours that I would have available. Yeah. And so I think people have to embrace that first. You have to you're absolutely right. It has to start with the mindset of it.
Yeah. And the the rule that we have in Coach regarding a new job in Strategic Coach. So we just crossed 135. We've got 135 full time Strategic Coach, and there's only two questions you have to ask. One is, does hiring this person free up Babs or Dan? And if the answer is yes, obviously it's a go ahead. But if no, then the next question, and this is the yes, it's the digital. We either hire or we don't hire. Does it free up someone who frees up Babs or Dan? So all employment in Strategic Coach, the only reason why you would bring on someone new is that it creates upward freedom for the whole organization, for either the two, owners of the company or individuals who are directly freeing up Babs or Dan. So for example, I just hired a podcast manager because I have, I've really kind of gone hog wild.
You're what they call a professional podcaster. You're Ryan Seacrest.
Yeah,
I thought I did a lot of podcasts, but you are even more.
Yeah, well, I'll have 160 of my own over the next 12 months.
Yeah,
and I'll have 20 visits on other people's podcasts, which has to be organized and everything like that. And just to finish this, and the person who is doing this is the person that I'm most relying on for actually managing the growth of the Game Changer workshop, which just started, 9 months ago. And so I said, I can't grow in the Game Changer unless Eleonora, Eleonora Mancini. Yes. And I said, I got to free Eleanor up. And the podcast manager came on, hit the ground running. And within about 45 days, probably Eleanor is going to get back about 300-400 hours over the next year, all of which comes into the Game Changer. So that's a perfect example. We're all trying to get above ourselves.
Yes, that's exact. Everything you want is above yourself. That's exactly right. Yeah, hopefully it's not below yourself.
But it's really funny. So I was saying the other aspect of that cultural, social sort of, negativity is also within your own family. If you come from a family, I'm blue collar, and it's kind of interesting. I was noticing how much, although I don't make my living in the blue collar way and never have, since 18 years old, I still have kind of a blue collar approach to things, and that is that I could never see myself not working. You would always be working, and I love work, and I like teamwork with other people. But in my family, with siblings, my particular approach to personal life and how I operate is met with complete non-comprehension.
Yeah, and that is true, right? Because what your whole families, what your environment is you're observing that from everybody else. Like nobody in my family were entrepreneurs. I mean, that's not true. I have one aunt that I kind of look back on now, that when I came down to Florida to, was training for tennis. I finished up my senior year in Florida, and I lived with my aunt, my father's sister, and she owned a salon, and she had, just the same business for her entire, 30 years. Probably, where it was the same thing, had her one location and her clientele that would come. She worked 4 days a week, and that was it. 4 days on and 3 days off, and had everything that she wanted. But it was just that was her choice. But it's funny how that nothing ever changed. It wasn't like growing to get a bigger salon or to hire more people. It was all just for her, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Babs comes from a family of mostly doctors.
Yes.
You know, but the moved back a generation beyond that, and they were or 2 or 3 generations really. They were gold rush entrepreneurs. 2 brothers who had gone to the California gold rush and came back. They made a pile and came back, and they literally started a town in northern Michigan, sort of a town that it's now a resort town on the Lake Michigan side of Michigan, and literally created the town. You know, I mean, they were the money behind the town, and they had the mercantile. The mercantile was the general store, but they did everything. You know, it had everything, and you know, fresh food, produce, all your supplies, and you know, and everything like that. So she came out of that, and one of the next generation had a manufacturing company in Detroit and closed up one day because of unions, moved to Florida and became the biggest owner of supplying coin laundries to apartment buildings around Florida. Yeah,
that's interesting.
His 2 sons still run that business. They still run, and they're up and down the East and West Coast when all the apartment buildings were being built in the 50s and 60s. They just locked up all the laundries, you know.
That's an interesting thing. You know, it's funny. I was just telling somebody this week about when I was in high school, my friend Chip, his father, on his 16th birthday, instead of giving him a car, like the traditional, Florida 16-year-old gift, he gave him a coin laundromat. And, and so that he would then pay for the car from the coin laundromat. And he parlayed that into then buying a coin car wash, in the same block there. But it was just kind of, it's an interesting thing that when you're...
That's a really... that's a gift that really tests out the character and the ambitions of the recipient, you know.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so that's kind of that's a funny thing, though. It's what you grow up, I think. What was the reception in the first few workshops that you've had here to the idea? What were kind of the polarities there? Were there any resistance to it? And or
which one?
Which one? When you said you're starting out now with this, the who not how is the focus of the workshop.
It's total buy-in. Yeah, and I mean that's why our excitement. I mean, I've gotten no pushback from everyone except, in other words, they've made I would say that everybody has psychologically and emotionally made the decision to do it, but they're up against, actually they haven't gone in this direction previously, and now there's a whole new skill regarding finding who's and actually getting. But I haven't seen anybody yet who's that I personally have experienced. Now I'd have to do a survey of all the coaches to see it, but it just went through the program like an electric current.
Yeah,
and
that's great. That was where when I've been talking about the self-milking cow idea of taking every step or every process that I'm involved in and drawing the milk line is what we called it. Is where is where is the line that this is milk making and this is farm work that somebody else could do, and that's a really clear line for people. They get it when you talk about it like that.
Well, last week I just had somebody in my 10 times workshop who had been at your most recent breakthrough blueprint in Orlando,
Okay.
and he was saying what a remarkable simplification in his thinking about his business came about.
That's
going
great.
through, yeah, and it's an interesting thing because it's it's almost. I was thinking of profound shifts that humans have had to do in their life, and one of the most profound shifts, and you can tell it was profound, and you can also tell it was difficult because of the huge amount of bloodshed that surrounded it. But it was the shift over from memorization and having reading, actually, which happened between around 14. Probably about a 2-century period from 1450 to 1650, where those who were literate and independently literate, in other words, that they were really simply smart people who weren't scholars, they weren't monks, they weren't priests, they weren't aristocrats, and printing just spread right across Europe. But the whole point up until then, learning had been memorization, and now learning was, if you need to find out something, find something written about it and read it and do what it says. That's a tremendous shift, and I think that this whole notion that the way to make your way in life is not through howling beyond a certain point. We all have to how to to get started in the marketplace, but as soon as you can, switch off to hooing. I think that there's a lot of resistance and pain in the marketplace. I was reading an article that says skill acquisition is now 10 times more important than having a degree in anything.
Wow. And that's an interesting thing. I was thinking about that with Alexa. My Echo tube that we have in the kitchen, and I start to realize how the use of that, every piece of knowledge kind of thing that is knowable right now, and the AI, the interfaces of this are just getting so much easier with voice that you have instantly available everything that's known that you could ask, and I wonder about this whole idea of how we're going to be able to incorporate that kind of AI with the voice technology to be able to connect us with things happening in background. I saw a demonstration of the Google Home. I think I don't know what they're calling theirs, Cortana, I think, or something, or whatever, the Microsoft Home, one of them. But imagine the voice integrated device that to say, "Hey Alexa, set me a hair appointment for Tuesday between 10 o'clock and noon at Ruby Salon," and that'd be all you'd say to it, and then it demonstrated that in background now, without you even having to listen in, you were getting to listen in because of the demonstration of it, but it would then call the salon, and the way they have the voice AI now, it even sounds with slight hesitations built in to the voice, like saying, somebody answers Ruby Salon and they go, "Oh, hi, I'm calling to get a women's hair appointment for Tuesday, the 12th, between 10 and noon." And it was really kind of a fascinating thing that the whole interaction of booking the appointment with a live person was really amazing. They went back and forth, negotiated the thing. I have something at 1 o'clock. Do you have anything closer to 10? They said I could do 10:30. Oh, that's great. I'll do the 10:30. And then it's like, I mean, really, that's exactly how it happened.
No, I heard the Peter Diamandis played this at one of the.
Oh, did he? Okay.
60s, yeah, and it was really funny. I mean, I don't want to disrupt you here, but I just got a whole bunch of New Yorker magazine cards. You know,
oh yes,
I was in getting Christmas cards, and I bought about 15. But there's a guy on the phone, and he's saying, "No, Thursday doesn't work. How about never? Would never work for you?"
That's a classic one. I love that. How about never? Yeah. Does never work for you?
you know, but here's the thing that I'm really discovering about this projection of technology is the only way that we can project technology is imagining that we're going to be exactly the same 10 years from now, but we're going to be incredibly more capable about technology. But we never are, in other words, technology affects us, but we also transform. And I think people have a great desire with any technology is that it should be normal and boring as fast as possible.
Right. That's a great one. And I've noticed
we don't want technology to be a star. I have no interest in technology being a star in my life, and I think that's a cultural response to people is, I mean, you can correct, you can control the clouds and give us rain when we need to get rain and everything else, but so big deal. So big deal. We know that. And my sense is that humans will never psychologically and emotionally allow technology to be a star in the center of their life. They'll use it, but it'll always be the dog under the table.
Right. Yeah. And I start to see what becomes more normal is the confidence and your capability to actually use it, right? Because some of the things I'm not using a fraction of the Alexa capabilities that are available to me right now. I'm just learning my way around the ones that are the easiest right now.
They're kind of accessible. You use the ones that are accessible, and there's an immediate payoff for using them.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you say, well, I could spend the next 2 years mastering everything on Alexa, but that wouldn't be fascinating and motivating to you. That might be fascinating and motivating to the designers of Alexa, but it wouldn't be fascinating and motivating to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's a little one that I picked up and immediately put in my workshops. It's called Otter AI, OTTER.ai.
Okay.
Yeah, otter like a big beaver, like the animal. And it instantly transcribes anything that I'm doing either in the workshop, in the recording studio.
Somebody mentioned that to me. Gary Claben actually mentioned that to me. He was
he was blown away by it.
Yeah, that's what it was. He did that at the workshop, right?
Yeah, it was blown. And what we did, Kathy Davis, we just projected it up on the screen while I was talking, and people were really quite amazed because it differentiates immediately between voices. And then if you put a name to a particular, sound, then it'll actually put the person's names in. So if you but otherwise there's clear paragraphs when I finish talking and someone else, there's a division on the script. But I have to tell you, in 4 workshops, Dean, it's totally transforming the way that I coach.
Oh, really?
Okay. Mm-hmm. In this respect, I am talking in much more complete sentences, much more in complete paragraphs after 4 workshops because, at breaks, and I'll do some talking, and other people do thinking, and then there's discussion groups. I go back and I look at the transcript, and
yes,
already I've been trained to be a much more clear cut, and I'm providing much more context than content, and that's at the end of just having 4 workshops doing it. I'm already being changed by the technology. Yeah.
And talk about being able to then instantly come out of it with, something captured that because often in a workshop, you might say something that is the first time or the first way that you've said something, and it would be really great to have that.
So Kathy Davis, who's in every one of my workshops, at nighttime, she goes through the transcript for the day, and she'll mark it as she's going, and she pulls out the 10 new things that I hadn't said before and sends them to me so I can read them overnight.
Wow.
And and already I'm forming the next quarter's workshop based on the feedback that I'm getting, because everything I'm saying is showing up in transcript form.
Wow.
And it's so you can do it for free. So it's just Otter, for those of us who are listening. You just punch in Otter .ai. It comes up. You can sign up, and you can start using it either on your cell phone, on your iPad, or you can use it on your laptop. And the first 600 hours are free per month. 600 minutes are free per month. And if you want more, then it's $10 for 6,000 minutes.
Wow. So it's 50 hours. 50 hours.
It's pretty good deal. And you can do it on Zoom. You can anything. If you have meetings and you don't want anything forgotten, or you need a good record of what was being done. And I think this is how AI is more and more going to come into our lives. It's going to come in at the margins and the sides of things that we find annoying or inconvenient, and it does away with them.
Yeah. I often joke that, think of it as like Get Magic as an example of that, if that were always listening. But I think of it as on the Flintstones, Fred and Barney had this gazoo, the great gazoo that they could just summon. Little green Martian who would be their little assistant to get them out of jams and stuff. But that is almost like what we have here is the ability to get anything.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, the surveillance society, is becoming a topic I'm noticing because I internet surf a couple hours a day, and I'm noticing this thing about who's listening in, who knows everything that you're doing. And it's an interesting topic because literally, unless you've brought in, experts to make sure there are no bugs in your house, probably, they could be built into the smoke detectors. They could be built into the lamps. They could be built into your television. And I remember, the Chinese, of course, are, maniacal about this. They're going to have everybody on a social credit system, and the state will listen in on everything that you're saying in the country of China, everything that's said. And I said, it becomes counterproductive after a certain way. And I remember President Reagan, because there was a lot of discussion in the 1980s about the Soviets stealing American secrets. And he says, what we ought to do? He says, we ought to get every secret in the country, and we ought to type it out, on paper, because we weren't digital that time. And however many thousands of 747s it required us, we put it in boxes on 747s,
right?
And we just land on Moscow's runway, and we throw the boxes out in the runway, and we just give them all our secrets. And he said, just the sheer effort to sort out our secrets on the runway would bring down their whole regime.
Yes.
And in fact, that's kind of what happened. That's kind of what happened. If you're surveilling and analyzing, what other people are saying, I can guarantee you one activity you're not doing, you're not creating anything new.
Yeah.
And I think the Chinese, if a quarter of your population is actually surveilling and watching the other 3/4 of the population, I think it has a real negative impact on productivity, creativity. Did you see the East German movie, which was called The Lives of Others?
No, I did not.
Oh, it's terrific. It won the Academy Award as best. But when East German,
is it a recent movie?
Yeah, maybe 10, 15
okay.
years.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and what it is a playwright who has been, is being informed on and surveilled by the East German, the Stasi, which was the name of their secret police. And when the regime collapsed in 1989, it was revealed that approximately 1/3 of all adults in the East German population were informing on the other 2/3.
Wow. That's
and what happened is that everybody after about 5 or 10, I don't know what the time period is, you could go to a kind of like a large building of records and get the actual records of who informed on you and what they said about you.
Oh my. That's amazing. I wonder, have you heard anything, Dan, about China's new social score, how that's working? Have they adopted it already? I thought it was just coming in now.
I think it's 2020. Okay.
I thought it's going to go away.
No, what they're demanding now is that every corporation that has, it has credit scores for individuals. Yeah. They have to give them all to the government because they're going to coordinate all the credit scores, and to get a handle on people's total behavior, their buying behavior, their communication behavior. And then you'll be given a score, and that either opens doors to you or closed doors to you,
right?
Economically and politically, and socially. And I said, humans are so clever that it's going to be the biggest and most corrupt criminal organization in the world. Because if you know a programmer, you just bribe programmers to change your credit score. You know what I mean? It's just going to be a massive bribe, corruption, criminal organization because everybody's going to figure a way to game the system.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny how
and the other thing is that the senior communist leaders and their families will be exempt from the credit score system.
Mm-hmm. Of course they will. Yes.
Yeah.
That's funny. So you could reach the beyond reproach level. You could be like all access level.
Yeah.
If you're Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, and it's just a total attempt to coerce a population of 1.4 billion people. And, but if you have that mentality, then you don't have, it's a paranoid mentality, actually. It's, everybody watching everybody else, It's like in entrepreneurs are always watching what the competition is doing, almost never create anything new.
Yes.
You got to watch what your customers and potential customers are doing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. This is that's something. This week, Dan, coming up here is going to be my further experiments in what I'm calling intermittent fasting from the internet, and being constantly from my oxygen tank, as we've been lovingly calling it.
Yes.
Of going to really make a conscious thing to do more deep work this week.
Yeah.
And because I'm realizing there's just no end. All these little constantly on, and just slightly engaged is a little bit. It's distracting. It really is, especially for someone like us.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure as a result of this, a lot of interesting new concepts are going to.
That's it. I mean,
created.
Just having that, without that, without that constant barrage of input, it's going to allow my brain to relax a little and activate on creating stuff. And I think that's a better thing rather than defaulting. So I will report on that for sure. Is this our last?
I have to tell you, I got quite a stir in the workshop on Friday when I reported that you represented 90% of my cell phone time
yes.
over the last 12 months. 12 months.
That's funny.
This is how I deal with the distraction. I devote the entire technology to one person.
The your mono user of it, right? That's the best.
Yeah. I went for quality. I went for quality, not quantity.
Yes, exactly. That's so funny. Well, Dan, is this our last call for?
I think
the
this
year?
is it until I see you. I think.
Yep.
We're
I'm going to arrive.
You're coming in on Sunday. Before the 10
I'm going to arrive on. I'm going to arrive on Sunday. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, great.
So perfect. I'll come by and see you if that's okay.
Yes. Yep.
Perfect.
Please.
Okay.
Yeah, and stay for dinner.
Yes, I will. I would love that.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, have a great deep dive. You're
yes.
The analogy here is you're like one of the Philippine sponge divers who can go under just by holding their breath. They get aerated at the top and they can go down for 8 minutes without oxygen. So
I love it. That's going to be me.
I hope you find a lot
for 8 hours.
New sponges. I hope you find a lot of new sponges.
I love it. Okay. Dan, thanks.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.